This is a 1978 Avanti II, and today I'll show you the interior and exterior, and then take you for a drive. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Before we get to the video for today, I'd like to thank everyone who has subscribed to the channel for subscribing. Thank you all so much for all of your continued support. It really means so much to me. We also have been gaining new subscribers. We have over 4,500 subscribers to the channel, so I'd like to welcome all the new people to the channel. I hope you'll enjoy it, enjoy the videos, enjoy the reviews. I have a lot of fun with it, and I hope that you will too. So, taking a look at what we have for today, we have a 1978 Avanti II. A very unique car, very storied history, and I'm really excited to show you guys exactly what the Avanti is all about. I've always seen these cars at car shows across the country where I've gone, so it's really neat to finally get my hands on one of these to review. And the Avanti is the first non-General Motors car that I've ever reviewed, so we'll see how well I do. I'm really lucky to have it for today, so I hope that you all will enjoy this video. So, without further ado, let's begin with the review. But before we get started with the actual review of this particular Avanti, I'd like to walk you guys through some of the history of the Avanti II and the Avanti brand in general. Studebaker created the Avanti back in 1962 to be a halo 4-passenger performance coupe. The Avanti could be purchased for a reasonable $4,500 at the time, and even came out before the introduction of the Mustang in 1964 and the Camaro in 1966, so the Avanti was very much ahead of its time. Although the Avanti was made to be a luxurious sports coupe, it could be ordered with a manual transmission and the highly desirable Paxton supercharger, which was attached to the 289 cubic inch V8 engine. With the extra power of the supercharger mated to that engine, the Avanti broke many world records back at the time for production cars. One Avanti actually broke 170 miles per hour on the Bonneville Salt Flats, which is an incredible feat for the time. But unfortunately, the first Avantis were plagued with issues which limited production to less than 6,000 units for 1962 and 1963, so Studebaker decided to close their factory in South Bend, Indiana. But the Avanti's story did not end there. Several Studebaker dealers, Nate and Arnold Altman, as well as Leo Newman, decided to purchase the rights to build more Avantis in South Bend, Indiana. They introduced what was called the Avanti II, which is the name of this car, and built them until the early 1980s when the business went under new ownership once again. But what really makes the Avanti cool is that during much of the production run of the Avanti II, the design of it barely changed from the early 1960s model. Although they did make several small tweaks to the exterior and the interior as far as adding new appointments or amenities to make it nicer and updated, the exterior shape of the car remained unchanged, which is really interesting that a car that looks like it was designed in the 60s was still being sold in the early 80s. Although most Avantis were built with a Studebaker chassis, throughout the entire history of the Avanti nameplate, many of them were given engines, transmissions, and chassis from Ford and General Motors. And what's really cool is that many Corvette engines could even be found under the hoods of Avantis, including this one. Unfortunately, production of the Avanti did end in 2006. The company owner, Michael Kelly, the 6th owner of the Avanti name, actually was arrested for doing a Ponzi scheme. And it's really quite unfortunate that the Avanti's history had to end right at that point in that way. It kind of taints an otherwise beautiful and really unique history with this car. Now that we've talked a little bit about the history of the Avanti nameplate, let's talk about the exterior of this vehicle. As I said before, most Avantis did not change their design appearance that much. This still has a lot of features and appearances that look like it was made in the 60s, which is really interesting. And what's really also interesting is that the body of the Avanti was made out of fiberglass, much like the Corvette was. And taking a closer look at the front end of the Avanti, there are several things I'd like to point out here. First of all, it looks like there isn't a grille on this car. As you can see on the top of the front bumper here, there is nothing here, just red paint. However, there is a grill on this car, of course, to get air into the engine, and that is located beneath the front bumper. Really unique placement for the grill there, but I have heard that it still can suck in enough air to keep the engine cool, which is of course very important, but that is just an Avanti thing. Just about every Avanti I've ever seen has a lower grille and just a blank front end. Almost looks kind of like Tesla's copied that design from them with just the front end with no grille. I'm just kidding. But it's really cool that Avanti had that sort of design language. It helped them to stick out from the rest of the crowd. No other car that I've ever seen has just a grille below the front bumper. I am glad that Avanti added the Avanti II name there on the front of the car, so it isn't just a bunch of red paint here. It actually has something you can at least look at rather than a grille on the front end of the car. And also on the hood, there's a little section on the driver's side that bulges up a little bit and has a vent on the far end of it. Avanti actually did that for many years throughout the production of the Avanti II. They kept that as a design feature of the Avantis. And the last thing I'd like to mention while I'm at the front of the Avanti is that where the windshield washer fluid sprays out of, it has a really interesting design. It's like a star that's in chrome, and it just looks like it's right in the middle of the hood, prominently placed there. Kind of interesting that Avanti decided to do that just to make it look a little bit special for the windshield washer fluid. Now taking a look at the side of the Avanti II, there are several things I'd like to point out. First of which, this car is much smaller than just about anything else I've ever reviewed on this channel. This is only about 197.5 inches long, but that's okay because this was supposed to be more of a performance coupe. I do also really like the chrome mirrors on the doors here. They look very nice, have an interesting shape, but I also very much like how the door handles open on this car. You pull on them, they kind of move outwards, then of course the door opens, then you can shut it again. I also really like how the door feels when you open and close it. It feels very solid and very hefty, like many other 70s cars that I've reviewed. And there are of course keyholes below the door handles on both sides of the car. And the Avanti also had disc brakes on the front two wheels, but drum brakes on the rear. Now moving along to the driver's side of the Avanti, I did want to mention that we do have a power antenna here, which is nice to see on a classic automobile. And we of course have a fuel door here, which when opened or unlocked, there is a strip of leather on the inside which protects the paint of the car when you stick in the gas nozzle, and it won't scratch the paint of your Avanti. And also looking at the rear window here, I think this is kind of a very interesting design feature of the Avanti II. It looks very much like a 60s car styling thing, which kind of just shows that the whole of this car was definitely stuck in the 60s because it was designed in the 60s. And I think I personally like the look of the Avanti II the most from the side view. It doesn't look quite as strange as the front end. The front end looks a little different to me with the big headlights and everything, but the side, it looks like it is a car from the 60s, which is really nice. 60s design I do love very much, and this car really fits in well. Now moving on to the back end of the Avanti. Once again, there isn't too much to point out here, but I do really like the design of the creases here that kind of go back from the sides of the car into the trunk and over and across. We do have another Avanti II nameplate on the trunk there. Another large chrome bumper is present, which is nice, looks good. And we have these big pieces of rubber here, so if you do back into something, you hopefully won't damage your car or the car you hit. But something that is missing on the back of the Avanti here is either a keyhole or a lever to get into the trunk. I'm not sure if Avanti had to cut some corners to save money, but it's kind of a shame that there isn't an easy way to get into the trunk from the back of the car. The only way to get back there is this really awkward handle in the back seat of the Avanti, right underneath the seat. You have to pull on the handle, and only then can you open up the trunk. And it seems like that handle is actually in a really awkward position. First of all, it's in the back seat, so if you have like a child back there, they might pull it as a joke and then suddenly your trunk is flying open. But also what's funny is that Avanti says when you pull on that handle, you may have to put it back into place as it may not go back there automatically. Seems like it might be a cheap handle if it doesn't pull back there on its own. You have to actually push it back into place. But anyways, once you do open up the trunk, like so, as you can see, there is actually a decent amount of space in here. I actually wasn't expecting this to have much of a trunk because it's a relatively small vehicle, but no, there's actually plenty of room for several suitcases. We also do have a nice full-size spare tire underneath the floorboard there. And also in the back of the trunk of the Avanti, there are these little leather pouches for tools and stuff. Kind of cool that that's there to help you fix your car if you break down, but I'm not sure if that's original to this Avanti or not. And of course, this is not a Cadillac, so no trunk pull down. One of my favorite features, not on the Avanti. All right, now let's take a look underneath the hood of the Avanti and see what we can find. So first of all, this hood is front hinged, as you can see, much like Corvettes of the time, which is pretty cool. But underneath the hood, we have the 350 cubic inch V8 engine, and that produces about 180 horsepower and 270 pound-feet of torque. That's a pretty good amount of power, but the Avanti II weighs about 3,400 pounds, so it still really isn't all that quick, at least certainly not by today's standards. The 0 to 60 time is about 8.3 seconds, which we'll get to test hopefully when I go out on the drive. And this engine will probably get you about 13.6 miles per gallon average, which honestly is not bad, especially compared to the Cadillacs I've reviewed from this time. I mean, you're lucky sometimes to average 11 miles per gallon, so this little car must have been kind of efficient for the time, at least by American car standards, which is pretty funny. All right, let's start up the Avanti and see how this 350 cubic inch engine sounds. Now, before we take a look at the interior of the Avanti, I'd like to show you guys the keys that came with it. And here we go. This is the A-line shaped key, Avanti called it, and this is for the ignition. Now, there were actually 2 sets of 4 different keys that came with the Avanti. That's a lot of keys, and I unfortunately don't have the other ones with me today, but I just have the ignition one. But there was an oval-shaped key, which was for the door locks, a shield-shaped key for the glove compartment, and finally a round-headed key for the trunk. So it's just kind of amazing. There were so many different keys that came with the Avanti. I don't know why they couldn't do all that, but with maybe just 2 keys or 3. And what's also interesting about this key is that on the back it says Fitz Chrysler products on it, which I don't know why you would ever have a key that just says, oh, this Fitz Chrysler products, but I have no answers for you guys on why that's there, but kind of an interesting key that came with the car. I do wish I had the other ones, but that is what the ignition key looks like. Now that we've taken a good look at the exterior of the Avanti II, let's go ahead and take a look at the interior and see what it's like. Looking at the interior of this Avanti, I very much like it. First of all, I love this maroon, this red that's used throughout the interior. The materials, the cloth looks beautiful. It has some very shaggy looking carpets in here, but they're of course very soft, but very much period. We do have some wood on the dashboard as well as on the center console. It's not real, but it still looks very nice inside of this interior. But what's especially cool about the Avanti II's interior is that it's supposed to evoke a theme of aircraft and aviation. And that's actually something I thought of immediately when I first saw this interior. The way that the gauges are laid out, or the buttons, the switches, the levers, they all look like something that belongs in an airplane, which is so cool, very sporty, and I'm sure that was a really cool look for the late 70s. Okay, let's get in the seat of the Avanti and see what it's like. All right. You do have a bit of a drop to get inside of this car, but it is pretty small and low, so I'm not too surprised. But now that I'm in the seat, it is actually pretty comfortable. The material, the cloth here feels very soft, very luxurious, which is what I expected from this car. I am fairly comfortable in the seat. However, there is no power seat controls for this model. We do have a little lever here to move the seat forwards and backwards, and a lever to actually fold the seats flat and to help make it easier to get into the back of the car. But there isn't really too much seating adjustments, so maybe not everyone would fit in here, especially if you're extremely tall. But luckily I fit in here pretty much fine, and I am actually pretty comfortable in this seat, even though I can't adjust it too much. And as far as controls on the driver's door go, there isn't really that much. We do actually have a door lock and unlock switch, as well as a little knob to adjust the driver's side mirror, and of course our door handle, which opens the door when you pull up on it. There's also a vent window that we can open up and let more air into the car. And directly ahead of me we have an Avanti steering wheel. It says Avanti right in the center. And just behind the steering wheel is our stalk to turn on or off our turn signals, as well as turn on our cruise control. What's really nice is this Avanti actually has resume functions and coast functions for the cruise control, so you can adjust it as you're moving, which is actually really nice to see. Kind of futuristic for 1978. On the right side of the steering wheel are our hazard lights, and our ignition switch is there as well. There is a tilt steering wheel here, but it does not have a telescoping function. But one of the coolest things about sitting in the driver's seat is getting to see all of these gauges right ahead of you. It is as if you're driving a fighter jet or something. We have a lot of different things here. First of all, on the center of the gauges, we have our speedometer. We also have our odometer right in the middle of the speedometer. We do have a tachometer, our engine heat indicator, our fuel gauge, oil pressure gauge. And we also have a gauge that shows our battery charge. And we also have what is called a manifold vacuum gauge. I honestly don't really know what that is, but it's there if you wanted to see it. But it's kind of cool. They seem to add as many different gauges as possible just to give this bit a bigger theme of aviation, which is neat. But one of my favorite things here is that we do have a working clock on the left side of the gauges. It lists the time, and of course it's actually angled towards the passenger, so the passenger could see it from that seat as well. And besides the gauges, there are lights here. We have two green lights near the top to show when our turn signals are working. There's a blue light within the speedometer to show when your high beams are engaged, and a red light beneath the other lights that shows brake. So when your parking brake is on, that'll warn you so you don't drive off when your parking brake is engaged. And the final thing to mention is the windshield wiper controls. You can change the speed of the windshield wipers by turning the knob to the right, but if you push in the knob, that is how you use the windshield washer system for the Avanti. And to the right of all of our gauges here, we do have a radio here. It has AM, FM radio. It has presets. You can tune the fade or the bass of the radio. Probably the coolest thing to mention about what is on the center console is that this car came with an optional CB radio. We have our microphone here on the center of the car, talk to the truckers, whoever else is on the road. Something that my generation clearly hasn't gotten into or doesn't use anymore, but it's kind of cool that you could probably talk to truckers on your road trips with this CB radio and have some fun on the highway. And then below the radio, we have a bunch of different controls for many different things. Some of them are for the air conditioning in this car, and some of them are just for doing random functions. But I will show you guys exactly what all of this means because it's all just really kind of disorganized and doesn't really make a lot of sense, which is just kind of strange. The first set of controls are the air conditioning controls. The lower knob controls the speed of the air that comes out, while the upper knob controls exactly how much cooling you want. There are, of course, controls for the heating system, but I'll show you guys where these are because they're in a random spot, but we'll get to that in a minute. And then directly below the air conditioning controls is a little circle, and that actually glows when you first get into the car, telling you to fasten your safety belts. Kind of an interesting place for a warning, but it's right there randomly in the middle of the dashboard. But beneath that are some really awesome looking levers, and these all serve different functions. The first one is to open or close the left vent, while the one on the far right is to open or close the right vent. Just like the 1961 Sedan DeVille that I brought you guys, this car has vents that open up in the floorboards to allow air to flow into the vehicle as you're driving forward. The second and fourth levers are to turn on or off the heat or air conditioning, and then the lever in the middle is to turn on the defroster. And then there are more plastic black switches behind those metal switches. The ones on the outsides are to control the windows. Yes, this car has power windows. They are not located on the doors, but the switches are in the center console. Kind of cool and kind of a unique and sporty place to put the window controls. Then we have the de-icer for the rear window, as well as the auxiliary lights switch, which turns on or off the daytime running lights for this car. And then behind all of those switches is our lever for the 3-speed transmission. We of course can change our gear, park, reverse, neutral, drive with this lever. Pretty sturdy and made out of metal. Feels nice to use. And then behind that is our ashtray, of course. We need to have an ashtray in this car because people love to smoke in the 70s. And then behind the ashtray is our lever for our parking brake. And what's really funny is that Avanti's description of the parking brake handle is that it has a pistol grip handle. Something that car companies cannot use to describe their handles anymore. But anyways, you do have your parking brake there. And as far as storage within the Avanti goes, there unsurprisingly really isn't all that much. There is a nice glove box here which opens up and has like little circles in it. I'm not sure if that's really made to be cup holders. They aren't really good cup holders if you do try and use them as cup holders, but there is some storage in there, which is pretty nice, as well as a little light that lights up. But one of my favorite things about the Avanti interior is within the glove box. Inside there's a little black box, and when you pull on it, it reveals a mirror as well as a little padded area. I'm not sure if that's made to be specifically for holding makeup, but I just think it's so cool that the mirror kind of reveals itself. A very unique thing that I haven't seen in any other car before. And something I think is really cool is that there's also a little red light that shines down on all the buttons and switches in the center console when the headlights are on. And it's really cool that it's colored red. And then looking above me, something that you won't find there is the rear view mirror. The rear view mirror is actually attached to the bottom of the windshield here in the middle of the car. Kind of an interesting place for them to put it because it's kind of more difficult to see what's behind you. You're seeing kind of what's behind you at a lower angle rather than at a higher angle. But I think it's kind of sporty and kind of cool looking for them to have put the mirror there. But what is nice about the mirror is that there is a little switch on the bottom of it to dim the mirror for nighttime use, or if there's a person with high beams behind you, you can flip that switch and then they won't blind you at nighttime. And then looking above me, we do have several visors here to block the sun in front of our eyes, as well as a row of more buttons. The switch on the far left of the overhead console buttons is the master light switch. For the second from the left is the parking lights or driving light switch. The third one from the left is the instrument cluster lights. So that's how you turn on your instrument cluster at nighttime. To see it, you have to actually turn that button on, which is kind of interesting. It's not automatic. It doesn't automatically come on with the headlight. I guess you get another cool switch to flip when you are driving this car at nighttime. And then the button besides that one controls the brightness of the instrument cluster lights. And then finally, the two buttons on the right are for the heating system in this car. Very interesting placement that they put the heating switches way up here on the roof when the other climate control buttons are down in the bottom of the center console. But anyways, those two buttons are to turn on or off the heating fan and then to control the heater fan speed. But something else that's missing from above me is actually the optional moonroof or sunroof. That would have been kind of cool to have on this car, as you could open up the roof and kind of let in air as you're driving along or driving fast down a road. But this car is missing that, unfortunately. There are also several more hidden levers within this interior in the front of the Avanti. Several of them are actually to the left of my left knee here underneath the dashboard. The lever on the left, believe it or not, is actually for the power door locks. If you push it forwards and backwards, you can unlock or lock the doors. A very interesting place to put that. I don't know why they wouldn't just put a switch on the door for that or in the center console, but for whatever reason, they put it right there. And there's a second switch by the power door lock controls, and this one moves the antenna up or down. But what's really interesting is that there's actually a warning label underneath that switch warning you not to use the CB radio until the antenna is all the way up. And I have no idea why that's even a warning, why they have to warn you for that, or if there's some issue that happens when using a CB radio when the antenna isn't up. But if some of you guys who have had experience with CB radios, please let me know what that means, because I don't understand why they would ever warn you to wait to use a CB radio until the antenna's up. But there is also one final kind of hidden switch, and that would be to the right of my right knee, and that one turns depends on the map light on the interior of the car. It's kind of interesting that Avanti decided to put these levers and switches in these random places. I'm not sure if they had to do that to save money, or when people added an option, they didn't have any other way to make it look nice. All right, next, let's move into the back seat of the Avanti and see what it's like back there. All right, I have now squeezed myself into the back seat of the Avanti, and I will say it is not really that comfortable. The floor is not that low, so my knees are pretty high up off the ground. They're not really on the seat. My feet do touch the seat ahead of me. My legs are touching it. My knees are almost touching it. So if you're tall, you are not going to fit back here. And if you're used to riding in big Cadillacs like me, you are not going to be very comfortable in this back seat. But getting that out of the way, it is still pretty nice back here. We do luckily have armrests as well as 2 individual ashtrays back here. So if you have 2 passengers back here, they both can smoke in your Avanti at the same time. There are 2 little lights in the ceiling back here, as well as some clothes hangers. You can also open up the window a crack with this switch here, which is very welcome, especially if you're back here all claustrophobic and need some oxygen. You can crack open the window a little bit and get some fresh air in here. There are also some little pockets in the back of the seats here. You can put, a map there or some car brochures or whatever you want. You do have this little armrest here, which strangely is separated from the seat. I don't know why that is, why it's not like built into the seat. Maybe it's here so if you have kids, they can like play catch or something, toss it around back and forth. I guess you do have an armrest, so it's nice that's there. But one of my favorite things about being back here is that there is this little door here on the top of the back seats. And what's interesting is when I first saw that, I thought that maybe that was a little storage area or maybe like a first aid kit or something interesting like that. But no, it is actually a trunk pass-through. When you open that up, as you can see, there's just a hole straight into the trunk and you can put long stuff through it. So pretty neat. I haven't seen cars from the 70s with trunk pass-throughs before. None of the Cadillacs I've reviewed had that. So it's kind of cool that Avanti had that as a little bit of a practicality thing. Okay, now that we've taken a good look at the exterior and the interior of the Avanti II, let's go ahead and take it for a drive. Okay, we're driving the 78 Avanti II. And as you can see, I just had to put on my sunglasses for this car because with all the aviation themed equipment in this vehicle, I just felt my inner Tom Cruise, my inner Top Gun just rising out of me, the need for speed. I had to put on these sunglasses just to fit the part. I just had to do it. So it's just so that's why I'm doing all this, because I just feel so cool driving this car. I feel like a fighter pilot. All right, I'll take that off so you guys can actually see my face though. But I gotta say, spending time with the Avanti, I'm actually surprised just how much I'd like it. I was kind of worried that, man, maybe it would be kind of like an awkward car, just kind of weird because they didn't really make a ton of them. It was made by Avanti, went through different owners throughout the years. What's the quality going to be like? And really, I'm impressed with this car. It really matches my expectations of a regular 70s vehicle made in America. And if not, it actually beats those expectations in some areas. It's a luxurious vehicle and the trim pieces aren't falling off. This does have just 56,000 miles on it. Every car is different, but I'm generally just very surprised by this vehicle. And it is fun to drive. It's comfortable in here for the most part, could be better, but it's just an enjoyable vehicle, and I can see why it was kind of desirable back in the day and why it cost so much. As a matter of fact, this 78 Avanti II cost about $16,000 new back in the day, and that very much eclipses the price of a new base Mustang, which would have been like $4,000, or a base Camaro, which would have been like $4,500. So getting this Avanti from just a performance car standpoint doesn't make sense. You can get performance cars for much cheaper. But also, it doesn't make sense just to get this as a luxurious vehicle. An Eldorado Baritz from the time would have cost about the same as this, right around $16,000. I would have gotten that over this, and just because it's bigger, it's honestly just more comfortable, more space, obviously just makes more sense as a luxurious vehicle. But this fits in the best of both worlds. It gives you really good performance. You got that Corvette engine. It really isn't bad performance, especially for the day. And you get a nice interior with a good amount of features that you probably wouldn't have gotten on something like a Mustang or a Camaro from the time. And I can see why people would have desired this vehicle over those other options that I just listed. It's not like an uncouth pony car, and it's not like a floaty-boaty Luxo barge of the 70s. It's kind of like a sporty, luxurious car. And BMW and Mercedes, they didn't really have so much of a presence back in the late 70s, or maybe they weren't as widely available, you know, people weren't buying them as much. So I can see where exactly Studebaker was going at with the Avanti when they first came out with it. I mean, they were really, in my mind, ahead of their time, and I can see why people love the car for that and love the history for that, because it's just such a unique vehicle that brought in a new era. And to tell you guys the truth, the steering is especially loose on this Avanti, and kind of looser than I expected it to be for more of a performance car. It's almost dangerously loose. I mean, it's like Cadillac loose, which doesn't really make much sense to me. So I think something may be broken with it, honestly. And I'm quite certain that the exhaust on the Avanti is not stock. It's just louder than I'd expect it to be, and also it has those words on the top, silver lines, so I'm pretty sure that someone else added that. All right, guys, well, we have a chance to test out the performance of this Avanti, and I have a feeling it's going to be quicker than the 78 Baritz of the same year that I reviewed. Here we go. Holy crap. It's 50, 60. I had no idea that was going to burn the tires. Wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah, okay, this is a lot quicker than I expected. Yeah, this definitely doesn't have traction control. I'm glad I wasn't like around anyone though, because that was insane. Probably could even have a better 0 to 60 if I didn't spin the tires so much. Well, I guess that's the 350 cubic inch at its best. That is impressive. Man, the steering is honestly kind of just unsettled. It's not easy. You're like constantly correcting. Honestly, in a way that's almost safer than having really good steering in the car, because with really bad steering, you got to constantly pay attention to what you're doing. You can't like go on your phone, start texting someone or something. You got to actually pay attention. But with really good, confident steering, you feel so confident that you don't have to watch the road. So that's really more dangerous. I'm just kidding. And something else that's really cool about the Avanti is that although, yes, it was a performance car, it was a performance car that came with safety features. What's really cool is that the people who designed the Avanti at Studebaker, they did have safety in mind, which most other car companies in America did not have in mind at the time, at least not to the same extent. All Avantis, they had a built-in roll bar, which is actually above my head back here on the roof. It's especially important for a sports car if you're going to be going around turns quickly. And also, apparently the doors were extra padded. There's padding around the driver to help make them safer in the event of a crash. And also what's really interesting is that I read that the door latches, when closed, help to strengthen the rigidity of the body, or strengthen the body in some way, which is all really interesting stuff, and once again just shows the forward thinking that Avanti and Studebaker did when they made this car, which is just really cool. Now, I interviewed an Avanti owner last year at Woodward Avenue Dream Cruise, and I actually did put that up on that video for you guys to see, and he was a really interesting man. What's really interesting is that whenever I see an Avanti person like that, or talk to an Avanti owner, they always just seem to have just such a great passion for the vehicle and the history. I mean, even more so than other car enthusiasts I talk to. And that seems like a common thing with Avanti people. I mean, it's just interesting that the Avanti created such passion for a car that only existed for 2 years, and then it was, you know, bought up by someone else and they started building it again. I mean, even the people who did that, who repurchased the Avanti companies to keep on building them, must have just had such a love for the car. I mean, it really must have been to them like they were supporting this underdog, this American underdog that was taking on all the big companies, all the big dogs in the world, and that they were making something truly unique. And I think that passion is really cool. I think it's cool what the Avanti did for car people. It's just so unique in that way, and I'm so glad I had the chance to review one of these to get a taste of that passion that Avanti lovers have. Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed the video for today. I certainly had a lot of fun with this car. Once again, it's just such a neat automobile, very unique, very historic, and I'm just so thankful I was able to review it, because I'm really blown away by it. It's really much nicer than I expected, and I love it. I mean, it's a really cool car, and now I have something to tell all the Avanti owners that I see in the future. So I hope you guys once again enjoyed the video, and I'll see you soon in the next one. Thank you all so much for watching my video. Please remember to comment, like, and subscribe, and to come back again soon for more videos. Thank you. Come on. Come on. I'm in the middle of the road and I can't just sit here. Okay, there we go. Man, I'm having troubles with the seatbelts today. Oh, come on. Anyways, that's a whole other story. Anyways, once you do open, it is open. I'm trying to disengage it, that's the problem. Come on. Are these people riding horses on the road? And I thought this was the oldest form of transportation on the road today, but I guess these horses are it. Interesting.